I had just set my teacup down when the phone rang. My son's name flashed across the screen. It had been weeks, maybe months. I smiled, thinking maybe he missed me. Maybe he remembered how I hate quiet nights like this. Maybe he just wanted to talk. I answered with a little laugh in my voice, ready to ask how he was, what he'd been up to. But he didn't even say hello. Just 5 words, sharp, fast, cold. I'm getting married tomorrow. I froze. I waited for more, a laugh, maybe, a joke, but he didn't stop. Your car and house are sold. Bye. The line went dead. I just sat there, staring at nothing. I live in the same little house I moved into the year Daniel was born. Just a simple, beige bricked cottage tucked on a quiet street where the trees arch over the sidewalk like they're trying to hold hands. 42 years I've been here. 42 years of planting tulips by the mailbox, sweeping the same creaky porch, and watching the neighbors' kids grow up and move away. My mornings are slow now. I wake before the birds, make a small cup of tea, and open the kitchen window to let the cool air in. I water my spider plant in the corner, check the mailbox even when I know it's empty, and sometimes walk to the post office just to hear another voice. It's not lonely exactly, just very quiet, the kind of quiet that gets into your bones. I still cook, though I don't eat much. Little meals, soup, toast, maybe some rice and lentils if I feel ambitious. I keep my late husband's plate and mug just where he left them, up on the top shelf, like he might come in and ask for lunch any minute. I retired the year Daniel finished college. My husband passed not long after. Cancer. Quick and mean. Since then, the house has been mine and mine alone. At first, that felt strong. Now, it feels like holding a thread that's slowly unraveling. Daniel used to call me Mama Jess. He'd say it in that sing-song way, like when he was 5 and came in with muddy hands and big stories. Mama Jess, I found a frog. Back then, he clung to my skirts and cried when I left the room. Now, I mostly hear from his secretary, a sharp woman named Elaine, who speaks too fast and calls me ma'am, like I'm someone she can't quite remember why she's dialing. The last time I saw Daniel was Christmas. 2 years ago, he came late and left early, brought a bottle of wine I didn't open and a gift card I never used, said he'd come back in the spring to fix the leak in the guest bathroom. That leak turned into mold. I eventually hired someone. Sometimes he texts, busy, call you later, but later never comes. I wait for it like the rain in July, half expecting, always disappointed. I think of when I used to rock him to sleep, his soft head tucked under my chin, the way he breathed in little hiccups after crying. I wonder if he remembers those nights. I wonder if any of it stayed with him. A few months ago, he mentioned someone new, Tanya. Just in passing, during a rushed call about a tax document, Tanya said to remind you to sign those forms. That's all I got. No last name, no details. No visit. I've never met her. I suppose that's the way things are now. You learn about your child's life through scattered fragments, a tagged photo here, a casual mention there. Once, I asked Daniel about her. He chuckled and said, "Don't worry, Ma. You'll meet her someday." But someday never showed up. After my husband passed, Daniel took over some things. It made sense at the time. The house deed, the car title. Just to keep things safe, Mom, he said. If anything ever happened, we don't want the government taking everything. He made it sound responsible, protective. I signed the papers at the kitchen table while he tapped at his phone. I didn't question it then. He was all I had left. Now, I see things slipping. The photo of my wedding day, the one in the wooden frame with the little gold etchings, disappeared from the mantel. He said he took it to be reframed. That was nearly a year ago. My grandmother's locket, the one with her initials engraved inside, vanished from my dresser. Safer with me, he said. Too many break-ins these days. And then there are the digital frames. Sleek little things Daniel mailed to me, one for the living room, one for my bedroom. You can upload all your photos to these, he said. So modern, so simple. But the frames sat blank for weeks. I didn't know how to work them. Eventually, one lit up with a stock photo of a beach. The others just blinked with empty folders. I still haven't seen a single picture of my family. Not one. Sometimes I catch myself looking around this house and wondering when it stopped feeling like mine. The chair by the fireplace used to creak in a familiar way. Now it feels stiff. The curtains I stitched myself are faded. The rug seemed too loud. I walk through the hallway and feel like I'm walking through a space I'm renting, not one I built my life in. I never thought I'd feel like a guest in my own home. Little things make me pause now. The mail arrives addressed to Daniel. Insurance papers I don't remember signing. Letters from banks I've never spoken to. When I ask him, he says it's just routine. Nothing to worry about, Mom. I've got it handled. And yet I do worry. I worry that the story of my life, the one I wrote in photo albums, handwritten recipes, and tiny keepsakes, is being slowly edited without my consent. I worry that I gave too much trust too easily. Still, I don't say anything. I smile when he calls. I nod when he talks fast. I tell myself he's just busy, just overwhelmed. He'll come around. But some nights, when the wind whistles too hard through the windows and the house settles with a sigh, I wonder if the boy I raised is still in there, somewhere behind the suits and the schedules and the silence. Because the woman sitting here, in this chair, in this house, in this life, she still remembers every word of his first lullaby, every skinned knee, every whispered dream, and she wonders if he remembers her at all. Wait, I said, gripping the phone tighter, my voice shaking but low. Daniel, what do you mean you sold the house? He sighed, annoyed. Look, we found a buyer. It's done. We, not I. We. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I wasn't told anything, I said quietly. You didn't need to be, he snapped back. It's all finalized. You're taken care of. My heart beat in my ears. He continued like it was an errand. There's a care facility. It's already arranged. You'll have your own room, meals, nurses. You'll be fine. A facility. It's nice, he said. Better than that dusty old house. You always said the stairs were getting hard. I couldn't speak. My hands trembled. Then, before I could say more, he added, I'm boarding a flight. We'll talk later. Congrats, Mom. You're officially retired. And then he hung up. Just like that. I sat there for a long time after the call ended. The tea on the table had gone cold. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just sat. Still, when I finally stood up, my legs felt unsteady. I moved from room to room like I was walking through someone else's memories. I ran my fingers across the piano keys that hadn't been played since Daniel left for college. I touched the kitchen table where he used to sit with orange juice and cereal, his feet swinging under the chair. The chair was still here. So was the dent in the floor where his toy truck chipped the wood. I opened the cabinet where I kept the mugs. His favorite one, the blue one with the chipped handle, still sat in the back. I walked into the living room and saw the armchair my husband built by hand. He worked on it every evening for weeks, said it'd be the chair he'd grow old in. He only sat in it twice before the hospital bed came. And now, all of it, all of this, was no longer mine. It wasn't a home anymore, not in Daniel's eyes. It was property, inventory, furniture to be listed, a memory to be cleared. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went into the hallway closet and pulled out the file box. I sat cross-legged on the floor with every paper Daniel ever had me sign. Tax things, title transfers, health proxies. I thought they were temporary, just formalities. But they weren't. The house deed signed over. The car sold in his name. My savings absorbed into a trust I no longer controlled, all under the name of protection. All done with my trust. I called a lawyer the next day. A man my husband once used. He was kind, but firm. I'm sorry, Mrs. Jessen. Everything looks clean. The documents are valid, notarized. The sale went through 3 weeks ago. You no longer own the home. 3 weeks. Daniel didn't even tell me until the night before his wedding. I hung up and sat back in my chair. The silence in the house felt heavier now. Later that afternoon, my neighbor, Mrs. Adler, waved at me from her front steps. I hadn't seen her in days. I was still in my nightgown. Everything okay, Jessica? She called. I nodded, lied. Just enjoying the breeze. She smiled gently, but I saw it. The worry in her eyes, the kind you don't say out loud. I went back inside, sat on the floor beside my husband's old records. And then I remembered. He'd warned me. Years ago, Don't give up control of the house, Jess, he'd said. Promise me, people change when money's involved. I had laughed. Daniel's not like that. He's still young, he'd said, still figuring out who he is. But promise me, Jess, don't ever make yourself dependent. And I had promised. But after he died, I didn't want to think about paperwork. I just wanted to make sure Daniel was okay. He was grieving, I thought. He needed support, so I handed over the keys, the accounts, the decisions, because he was my son, my only child, my golden boy. Now, now I wasn't even invited to his wedding. I checked my phone again, nothing from him. But I opened one of the apps I barely knew how to use, social media, the one he set up for me so I could keep up with the times. And there it was, photos, posts, a countdown banner with their smiling faces. Big day tomorrow, someone had written. Can't wait for Daniel and Tanya's incredible wedding. I scrolled. The venue was by the coast, expensive, elegant, far away. People were already posting pictures from the rehearsal dinner, her dress, his suit, champagne. My heart felt like it was folding in on itself, not one word, not even a formal invite. I hadn't even met her. I hadn't been asked, and still, my home helped pay for it. My walls, my furniture, my memories. They were part of the down payment on a life I wasn't even allowed to witness. I stared at a photo of him standing under string lights, laughing, arm around her. And then I asked myself the question I hadn't dared to ask before. How did I raise a man who could erase me so cleanly? No arguments, no screaming matches, no slam doors, just silence, a quiet fade, as if I'd been edited out of his story. 2 days after the call, a knock came at the door, not the warm kind, not the kind that brings company, just a short, businesslike rap. And when I opened it, a delivery man stood there holding a suitcase. No smile, no words, just a clipboard. Jessica Jessen? I nodded. He placed the suitcase gently at my feet. This is yours. That's all. And then he walked off. No note, no sender listed, but I didn't need one. I recognized the handwriting on the tag. Daniel's. Still neat, still careful, the way I taught him when he was little. Inside the suitcase were 3 outfits, plain, beige, impersonal, like they belonged to a catalog, not a person. A small pouch of toiletries, toothbrush, comb, travel-sized lotion, and a brochure. A glossy, trifold pamphlet with cheerful fonts and smiling elderly people seated in wheelchairs beside flower beds, sunrise pines, where comfort meets care. My hands went still. It wasn't a gift. It was a goodbye, a relocation kit. My breath caught my chest, but no tears came. I just stared at the suitcase. Then I went to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed. The sun had started to fall through the curtains, casting long gold shadows on the floor. I reached into the dresser and pulled out the old green sweater I wore to Daniel's graduation. I held it in my hands. Soft wool, slightly frayed at the cuffs. He had hugged me in that sweater, kissed the top of my head and said, I wouldn't be here without you, Mom. Now he had packed me a suitcase. I didn't cry, not loudly. I just sat, still. The house creaked. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower buzzed. But inside me, everything had gone still. The next morning, the phone rang. Not Daniel. It was Margaret, a friend I hadn't spoken to in a while. I saw pictures from the wedding, she said cheerfully. Looks like it was beautiful. I stayed silent. Oh, you were there, right? She asked. I swallowed. No. The pause on the other end was sharp. I didn't know, she began, her voice faltering. Tanya, I mean, she's lovely, but I did hear she was pushing for the house sale. Said it was too old lady for their lifestyle. My throat tightened. She wanted something new, something modern. She didn't like the history, I guess. I thanked Margaret. Hung up. And then I sat back again in that same spot on the bed. Noticed the edges of the suitcase were already gathering dust. It wasn't just the house. They had sold more. They'd sold more. I started digging through the files again, the ones Daniel had told me not to worry about. And there it was. Land. Land that had been in my husband's family for 3 generations. An old orchard. Left untouched, left quiet, but it was ours. Gone. Sold. Liquidated. Months ago, and where had the money gone? Wedding photos answered that. A seaside ceremony. Designer gowns. A honeymoon in France. They had funded their beginning by erasing everything I built. And the worst part was, he hadn't even looked back. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty mug on the counter, and felt something shift inside me, not rage, not even sadness, just clarity. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled down my oldest cookbook. The spine was cracked, the cover faded. It had belonged to my husband's mother. Inside were all my handwritten notes, substitutes, adjustments, little reminders, and something else, an envelope. Yellowed, folded, thin. I opened it with shaking hands. It was his handwriting. One last letter. If Daniel ever forgets who you are, Jess, remember I never did. You were the soul of this house, the glue, the quiet anchor. If the world tries to make you small, know that you never were. Love. Always. James. I read it 3 times, then a fourth. I didn't cry, but my breath felt heavy. That night, I made tea. Not because I needed it, but because I always did. And then I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the suitcase. That suitcase wasn't a life. It wasn't me. I was not a burden to be relocated. I was not a chapter to be closed. I was not furniture to be removed. I was Jessica, and I would decide where I lived, how I lived, even if it meant starting over, even if it meant doing it alone. But one thing I knew, I would not go to a place where no one knew my name, where no one knew who I had been or what I had held together. I had been the center of a family. I had been the warmth in a home. And I still remembered every recipe, every lullaby, every small moment that made life sacred. I would not be erased, not quietly, not at all. The next morning, I stood at the window and watched the wind move through the trees. It felt different now, not lonely, but open, like something new was beginning. I picked up the phone and called Mary. She answered on the third ring, her voice warm as ever. Jess? My goodness. I was just thinking about you. I didn't cry. I didn't explain everything. I just asked, is the offer still open? She didn't hesitate. Always. There's a spare room waiting, and the chickens will be thrilled to see someone new. That afternoon, I began packing. Not everything, just what mattered. My books, the worn ones with notes in the margins, my photo albums, the ones with real pages, not digital screens, and a few old letters tied in ribbon. My husband's handwriting still strong, still gentle. The rest, I let go. I called Mrs. Bright, Adler, and asked if she'd like the sewing machine. She cried when I gave it to her. The young couple down the street took the rocking chair, the one that had creaked through midnight feedings and long, quiet winters. What I couldn't give, I sold for a few bills. Enough to buy a train ticket, a warm coat, and a little dignity. Before I left, I met with a lawyer, not Daniel's. I brought him a fresh copy of my will. Everything I had left, the land, the insurance, the quiet savings, would go to a local charity for widows. Women who had lived long, quiet lives like mine, who had given all they had and been forgotten anyway. I left a letter with the lawyer, sealed in a small wooden box. It said, not everything can be sold. Some things must be lived to be understood. I didn't write Daniel's name. He'd already erased mine. When I arrived at Mary's cottage, the air smelled like rosemary and earth. The garden was wild and soft, with old stone paths and grapevines clinging to a broken trellis. It wasn't grand. It wasn't modern, but it felt real. She hugged me tightly, said, "You're home now." And I believed her. The days here are slower, but not empty. They're rich in ways I forgot life could be. I teach baking to a group of neighborhood children every Tuesday. We make things from scratch: biscuits, pies, bread with rough edges and golden tops. Their laughter fills the little kitchen. It echoes in a way my old house never did after Daniel left. I read by the fire now, real books, stories that remind me who I am. Sometimes I walk at dawn just to feel the cold air on my face. No one calls me ma'am here. No one files me away like a chore. Sometimes I catch myself laughing, really laughing. There's no bitterness, only clarity. I gave everything I had, and now what's left is mine again, not out of revenge, but out of peace. And peace, I found, is enough.